Let's dig deeper right now. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois is joining us. He's a veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Congressman, thanks very much for coming in. So when the Pentagon says today U.S. troops, soldiers, airmen, whatever, they're in combat, but they say the mission really changed. This sounds like a new phase in this operation against ISIS.
It does. It seems like it. It's funny to say we're in combat. It's almost like reiterating that the sky is blue. I mean, we know that when we bomb people, that's combat. When you have, even on an advise and consent role, in a combat environment, that's combat. And we saw what happened with the Special Operations mission. Obviously, that's very directly combat. The good thing to come out of this is the fact that I think this, the Pentagon admitting this, the civilian leadership admitting this, liberates the president to have more options. I feel like he had his own red line of saying we're not going to put boots on the ground, we're not going to engage in active combat, and now he can finally do, I think, what's going to be necessary to push ISIS back, and that may include some ground combat.
You would support ground combat, boots on the ground, as it's called? Yeah,
but we need to be careful because people automatically think of 150,000 troops, 200,000 troops. I think you can have small units, direct action units, like we saw with the special operators, that can take out targets, capture targets, get information. That's undoubtedly combat and undoubtedly boots on the ground, but it doesn't mean that we're calling for an occupation of Iraq.
But it's going to result in more U.S. casualties.
It will. But these men and women, every day, they raise their right hand to defend the country, and I've done that too, and we all know that this very well may cost us our life, and we hope not. But to defend the homeland and to defend America from these terrible elements that are growing in the Middle East and at a rapid pace, unfortunately, American soldiers sometimes have to be put in harm's way.
It's not just more blood, but a lot more treasure. Also, the Pentagon has just announced that in the past 434 days since Operation Inherent Resolve, as it's called, this war against ISIS has started, U.S. taxpayers have already spent $4.75 billion, with a B, billion dollars in this war against ISIS at a cost of about $11 million a day. People hear those numbers, almost $5 billion. They say, couldn't that money be spent here in the United States, or shouldn't it be used simply to reduce the national debt?
Well, I'd love to be able to use it for that. And if we had a situation where ISIS didn't exist and, we weren't threatened overseas by these growing organizations that are growing faster than we can get a handle on, it would be great to invest that $5 billion in reducing the debt deficit or building roads and bridges. The problem is the #1 job of the federal government is to make sure Americans are safe. And we have to use all means to include that. I'm glad that my brothers and sisters that are flying these fighter jets in the Middle East are able to have laser-guided weapons that can protect civilians as best they can, and they can fly high enough that, frankly, they're not in harm's way from being shot at. That's what technology is, and sometimes that costs some money.
But the thought was, over the past decade, the U.S. would train and assist the Iraqi military to do this, and they've simply not done it.
Right. Absolutely.
Why invest more money if they're not going to step up to the plate?
Well, because I don't think we have any other option. Unfortunately, this is a problem, a cancer that's going to grow so big that if we don't have partners on the ground, as flawed as they are, we're going to have to see large amounts of Western troops in there, and that's where we don't want to go. The Iraqis were performing pretty well until we left in 2011, and then we saw the military fall apart. So hopefully we can rebuild that, but I don't think we have any other option.
It's a disaster right now.
It is.
All right, Adam Kinzinger, thanks very much for joining us.
You bet.
The Congressman from